By the end of 1772, the East India Company, a cornerstone of Britain's economy, faced a severe financial crisis. To alleviate its troubles, the company sought relief from the burdensome Tea Act. One area they wanted relief was removing the Townshend duties. This duty collected 3 pence for each pound of coffee sold in the colony. The North Ministry rejected this plea, unwilling to concede Parliament's authority to tax the colonies. A more strategic reasoning for maintaining the Townshend duties was to fund the salaries of colonial governors and judges. You see, previously these officials were funded by the colonial assemblies. North believed that the transfer of financial dependence from colonial assemblies to the British Crown increased government's control over colonial affairs. Rather than repealing the Townshend duties, Parliament passed the Indemnity Act of 1772, imposing a 10% duty on tea imported to Britain. This move effectively restored the tea tax within Britain, while still maintaining that 3 pence per pound tax on tea in the colonies. Unsurprisingly, this tax burden significantly increased the price of British tea, leading to a dramatic decline in sales. Despite the decline in sales, the East India Company continued to import tea, accumulating a substantial surplus of unsold goods. The North Ministry's response to the East India Company's financial crisis was the Tea Act of 1773. This legislation aimed to revitalize the company by granting it several key advantages. First, it restored the company's full refund on the duty paid for tea imported into Britain. Second, and more significantly, it allowed the company to directly ship tea to the colonies for the first time, bypassing the London tea auctions. By eliminating the middleman, the East India Company could reduce costs and offer tea at more competitive prices. To facilitate this new distribution model, the company appointed colonial merchants as consignees to sell the tea on commission. In July of 73, the East India Company selected tea consignees in New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and Charleston. The Tea Act of that same year authorized shipment of approximately 5,000 chests or 250 tons of tea to the American colonies. The importers were responsible for paying a tax of 1,750 pounds upon the tea's arrival. That's the equivalent of about 283,000 pounds in modern currency. Additionally, the act granted the East India Company a monopoly on tea sales within the colonies. Some British policymakers, including the former Chancellor of Esher, William Dowell, advocated for repealing the Townshend duties to ease tensions with the colonies. They argued that continued taxation was unnecessarily provocative. However, Prime Minister Lord North was resolute in maintaining the tax. North's decision was motivated by 2 factors. One, the revenue generated by the Townshend duties was used to pay salaries of the colonial officials. And more importantly, it was the principle of Parliament's right to tax the colonies. The protests against the Tea Act were not really about the price of tea. While the act did lower the cost of legally imported tea, the core issue was far more profound. The familiar cry of no taxation without representation remained central to the colonists' grievances, as did the broader question of Parliament's authority over the colonies. Samuel Adams viewed the East India Company's monopoly as an egregious overreach of government power, echoing the anti-taxation sentiment of others. Additionally, the Act's provisions for paying colonial officials directly by the Crown was seen as a dangerous encroachment on colonial autonomy, particularly in Massachusetts, where the Townshend duty had been fully implemented. Colonial merchants, including smugglers, played a critical role in these protests as well. The cheaper, legally imported tea posed a significant threat to their livelihoods. The merchants who had not been appointed as consignees by the East India Company faced financial ruin. These colonies had a large number of smugglers. Evading customs was a universal passion in the colonies, among rich and poor alike. Even they couldn't beat the cost of East India tea. Moreover, the establishment of a government-sanctioned monopoly on tea raised fear among other merchants that similar monopolies might be imposed on their goods in the future. Between September and October 1773, a fleet of 7 ships, laden with over 2,000 chests of East India tea, departed for the colonies. 4 ships were bound for Boston, while 1 was destined for each of New York, Philadelphia, and Charleston. As news of the Tea Act spread among the colonies, mounting opposition erupted. They went with similar tactics to those they used against the Stamp Act. Colonists began campaigns to pressure these tea consignees into resigning, while protesters in New York, Philadelphia, and Charleston successfully forced the consignees to step down, preventing the tea from being landed in those ports. Boston, though, presented a unique challenge. We'll look at the outcome of the confrontation in Boston in our next episode. If you've enjoyed this episode, tell a friend about us. Hit the like button. If you haven't already, subscribe to get future content. And as always, have a great day if you want to.